share sent out. Get the bot in here. And we should be good. And I timed that out perfectly so that would walk on screen at the given moment. Well, hello everyone, this is Chris Ingerson, and it is, I don't know, I was going to say August. It's September 4th, and this is the September 4th TextQuest Devstream. So, today we are going to be trying to finish up our input stuff. We are going to be moving over to Rewired there. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a good in Unity solution to get around it. Um, Short of potentially just downloading another package, which would have been basically the same thing as using Rewired, so meh. Um, but today we're going to be finishing that up. Before we get to that, we're going to do some minor options menu stuff, specifically adding options for arrow key sensitivity, because right now the arrow keys and the mouse sensitivities need to be two different things. I feel like a mouse sensitivity of 4 is pretty good, and an arrow sensitivity of 2 is pretty good, and those are obviously arbitrary numbers, but for now I'm putting them on a scale from 1 to 10. I cannot really imagine that people really need to go up to 10 because it gets really crazy around like 6 or 7. But still, I want to have that range. And because those have two different values that they feel good at, I need to make sure that I have two different values to be adjusted. Technically 4 because there's X and Y movements independent of one another, so go figure. Anyway, so let's go ahead and clear this out. And before we really do anything, I'm going to show you what I'm currently doing for game options. Currently, it has. Let's grab the scroll bar and let's just kind of scroll this. Currently, we have sliders set and inputs set up for arrow sensitivity and all that, but we don't have it coded yet. I have the variables in place, but I haven't actually just done the logic to make sure that everything works properly. And while we're in here, I would also like to add a slider for the amount of word hints that you get, probably ranging from, I'm going to say 2 to 5, defaulting at 3. And that's just a way to give people the ability to control that a little bit. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and put that back up at 1. And let's go ahead and go into the actual script here. Oh, and I spent way too much time this weekend trying to do some crazy editor shenanigans, and I probably spent 5 hours at least trying to get stuff to work in a crazy cool way, but I sadly had to give up on that because it was not super worthwhile for me to pursue those things. I'm sure I will get back to them at a later date, but for now I've had to sadly give up my attempts to wrangle in this ridiculous inspector and just live with it for now. Anyway, let's go ahead and open up the script. And while that's opening up, I'm going to take a drink. So I've already declared the variables that we're going to need, which includes the sliders, the input fields, the cached variables, all that stuff. So all we really need to do is just done what we've done a couple of times already, which is hook up the logic. So we're going to come down to here so you can see where I'm setting the cached arrow sensitivity and all that. We're going to come down to, let's see, on, invert mouse, smooth mouse. We don't actually need any clicking, but we do want these values. So we're going to come down to here, paste this in, and this is going to be on arrow sensitivity X slider changed, on arrow sensitivity X slider change. This is going to be arrow sensitivity X is equal to value, followed by arrow sensitivity X input is equal to, yep, that's all right. Same thing here, arrow sensitivity X slider. All right, pretty easy. Let's go ahead and copy that. We're going to paste this back in with Y instead of X. And that will make everything work just fine. All right. So that handles our slider and input changes, but now we need to assign our event listeners. And I do have my hints set up, correct? Pretty sure I do. Yes. Okay. Let's go ahead and scroll down to here. And we're going to say on, let's see, that's the on-click stuff. We don't need that. So we're going to go ahead and grab this, paste this in. This is going to be our arrow sensitivity on arrow, Okay, let's go ahead and copy this, paste it in, change everything down to X. And we should be good after that. Alright, so that handles our actual slider values. Now we need to handle hovering. So let's go ahead and copy this, paste this. We're going to say arrow sensitivity button X, arrow sensitivity button, which I'm going to assume means that I haven't actually declared the arrow stuff yet for buttons. So I didn't have all of the variables that I needed done. Let's go all the way back up. Sensitivity X, nope, I did not. Go figure. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and just copy this, paste this in. We'll call this, geez, it's not super great, but fine, yeah. Arrow sensitivity, arrow sensitivity, Y button. Okay, we can come back down here now. And pretty much we need to do the same thing. We're going to say arrow sensitivity X button dot on hover exit. Add listener on hover exit. Okay, let's just go ahead and copy that, paste it, and paste it again. Say Y button. All right, so now that's 2 of our buttons, and that's all that we really needed to do. So for now, we're going to let that compile. That should add all the fields that we need for the arrow sensitivity stuff, and then we'll be able to check that. Now, I do already have the logic coded, sort of, for our game settings. So whenever we refresh our gameplay settings, I'm now setting our, I am getting this right, sensitivity Y alt, there we go. And that should be good. Let's go ahead. That should be right. I actually might want to make sure that I'm using that correctly. Let's go to FPS mouse look. We're going to come down to here, sensitivity Y. Okay, good. I did. Cool. So let that compile. And of course that minor change is going to force us to recompile everything. Because I can't have nice things. But in all seriousness, it's actually not that bad. Although I will say I think Unity 2017.4.10 has a bug where you just don't get to see the compilation circle, and that really makes it hard to know when you can actually do things. So I basically have to sit here and like roll back and forth to scroll, and if I can't move, then it's not done compiling. It's very slow. Anyway, let's go ahead and come down here. Okay, so we want our buttons. So here's arrow sensitivity X, arrow sensitivity Y. Then we're going to need our sliders. Both of these things. So we're going to say arrow sensitivity X slider, arrow sensitivity X input, Y slider, Y input. All right. So that's all of the references that we should need. Let's go ahead and collapse this stuff and apply changes. And then we should be able to we should be actually good to test it now that I think about it. So let's go ahead and close that. Because our inputs are already hooked up. Our player should already get their values set whenever they spawn in. So let's go ahead and just give this a... Oh, wait, no. I did forget to save and load. So I need to come down here and let's go to gameplay, mouse smoothing, sensitivity, game controls. Let's go to definition here. We're going to copy this, paste these values, and we're going to say arrow X sends arrow Y sends, and then we can come back down here. Let's go ahead and paste this and make these 2F by default. This is going to be arrow. This is going to be arrow sensitivity X, sensitivity Y. Okay, so that's loading it. Now we need to save it out. Pretty much the same thing. Oh, and I did. Yep. Okay. Let's go ahead and grab this. Paste this in. It's going to be arrow, 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 and arrow. All right. That should now be everything, and it should load properly. So we'll let that compile. We'll give it a test run. And then we should be able to just edit those options, jump into a game, then edit those options live. So everything should work pretty much as we would hope. And I have no idea when you're done compiling Unity, so I'm just going to give you like 2 seconds. Oh, not done compiling yet. Well, there we go, finally. Let's go ahead and give this a test. Oh, and since I made a GIF recently, of course Maximize on Play is turned off. Actually, you know what? I bet that wasn't a GIF. I bet that's because I crashed. During all of my crazy editor shenanigans that I was trying to do, I found a Stack Overflow issue that caused Unity to crash. And then it was weird because I'm pretty sure I made it so that it was impossible for it to have a Stack Overflow, but it still managed to crash. It's weird. I don't know what to think about that. Anyway, let's go to the game. No errors as far as I can tell. This is from substance-related stuff. Ooh. Mouse sensitivity support. Okay, that's not right. Hold on. Let's go to our game options. Actually, let's go to game settings. There it is. Nope. That's right. It's a save. We got arrow sensitivity. Okay, so this is all going right. Let's go to game options view. I don't suppose that I changed it. Sensitivity X. Mouse. Arrow. Let's go to definition. It's arrow sensitivity. Peak definition. Sensitivity X. Sensitivity Y. Interesting. I guess I should have double checked to see if they were actually affecting each other or if that was just a weird fluke. Or actually it could have been save settings. I don't know why I didn't think about that. Options, because I did totally set it to 2 when I was doing a GIF capture a little bit ago. Let's go to game. We'll just crank that to 4. Crank you to 4. Okay, looking good. Let's go ahead and hit apply. Let's go back. Let's hit continue. So we're looking around. Yeah, it's about what I would expect for that. It's about what I would expect for that. Cool, okay. And let's go ahead and slow down. Let's go to options, game. Let's slow that down again. So we're gonna, actually no, let's speed this up to 4. I'll speed you up to like 7. Apply, back, zoom. Whee! That's 4, and then actually interesting. It's like Y is actually pretty unresponsive even at like 7 or whatever I set it to. Yeah, X-axis definitely seems much more noticeable. Also, sorry to anyone who has epilepsy. Okay. Something. Is something wrong? Like this seems right. Let me see if adjusting those values actually makes it feel faster or slower. Let's pick up on 2. Oh, wrong thing. Up to 2. Apply. Back. Zoom. I actually. No, apply should work. I might need to check to make sure that my code doesn't have any oversights in it. So this feels a little twitchier than I'm expecting, but maybe I'm just comparing it too much to the actual arrow inputs, which are obviously going to be a lot smoother. But yeah, this doesn't feel crazy. I mean, I can still do everything. Also, I guess actually I probably have a visual difference because I moved my FOV up to 90. I probably should try to keep that actually at 75, since that's the default field of view that people are going to have. Okay. So that all seems to work. Let's go ahead and quit. I don't know why I had to quit out, but I did. Okay, so that all seems to work. The next thing I want to do before we move on to the input stuff is just add an option for how many hints to show when it's offering word suggestions. So we're going to go ahead and turn on our UI again. Let's go to game options, go to root, open this up. We don't need to go to the input, but I do need to go to content, and we are going to pretty much, let's go ahead and also slide this down so that I can see everything. Pretty much all we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate arrow sensitivity. We're going to just duplicate that entire field. We're going to put it at the very bottom, which is fine. We need to change our scroll bar to be at the bottom again now. Okay. And we are going to rearrange this. So let's single everything out. Instead of arrow sensitivity Y, we're going to say word hint amount. Okay. Check out the label. This is going to be, let's see, show word hints. Word hint amount. It's a bit of a weird label, but I don't really know what else to call it, so. Word hint amount slider. Word hint amount slider. Okay. Oh, input, sorry. And this is actually going to be, I think I'll keep it formatted for 2 characters, even though it'll only ever be 1, I guess. This is going to be an integer number. That's correct. It's a character limit of 2. That's all fine. Here's our slider. Now this is going to be a slider from 2 to 5. I really don't want to go more than 5. I don't really know if I should limit myself to 1 or to 2. I could do 1, because that means that 3 is a happy medium, I guess. Oh, and I want this to be 3 by default, of course. Yeah, I guess that works. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and keep that. Let's go ahead and collapse this. And actually, I guess we need that open for now. And let's go ahead and code some hints and all that fun stuff. And we are going to need a setting that we can use there. Which, funny enough, am I not caching the bool value there? What happens when I toggle? Hold on. Let's see. Refresh settings on cancel clicked. Crouch, move, invert, smooth, hint. Yeah, okay. So I do that, but then I'm not caching that? That is interesting. Oh no, there it is. Cached hints. Okay. So I was just crazy there. Let's go ahead and, because it's up here with everything else, that's why. Let's go ahead and say, I guess it'd be better here, private int cached hint amount is equal to 3 by default, because 3 is the amount that I would like to show people by default. We are going to add, it's all grouped awkwardly. Okay, so we're going to say private int hint, what is it, show word hints, show word hint count, or I guess amount is what I called it. And yep. So instead of count, it's going to be amount. Get return 3 for now versus set We gotta go back to here, go to definition, come down to here, we're gonna say public static int show hint amount get return instance dot smoothing amount. I know we're not gonna do anything with that yet. Let's go ahead and peek this. Come up to here. We're going to say private int show hint amount is equal to 3 by default. Let's go ahead and save that out. Show hint amount. Then set instance dot show hint amount is equal to value. And I guess I don't really need to do anything else because all of this is going to be direct references, so I can kind of get away with not having refresh or anything get called. Pretty sure that I'm actually referencing this directly. Right? I am not, apparently. That's awkward. Okay. Interesting. Well, we'll get to that in a second then. Let's go back here to settings utility because I know I'm going to need that. Let's see, smoothing, show word hints. Let's go ahead and copy this. We're going to paste this in here. This is going to be show word hints amount. This is going to be show word hints amount. Okay. And then we're going to go over here to game settings, go all the way down to load. We don't need to call refresh gameplay settings or anything like that. So we're just going to go down to here. I don't have it loading in. Okay, that's interesting. Huh. How curious. Well, let's actually find out. Where are you being used? Find all references. It's under settings utility. There's our default settings, which I need to set up. Game settings. Oh, it's at the bottom, because of course it is. So we're going to say show hint amount is equal to gameplay info dot get int value settings utility dot game underscore show words hint amount and a default value of 3. Okay. And finally, we're going to come down here and just do gameplay JSON dot add settings utility dot game underscore show word hints amount followed by show hint amount. I'm probably going to actually rename this a couple of times. So instead of show hint amount, it's going to be word hint amount. Let's just go ahead and rename this to just word hint. Game word hints amount. Okay, we're going to go all the way back up to here. That is both saving and loading, right? Yes. Okay. We're going to go up to here. Rename this to word hint amount. Word hint amount. Okay, let's go to our game options view. We're going to have show word hints. So this is going to be game settings dot word hint amount. Game settings dot word hint amount is equal to value. Okay, we're going to rename this to be word hint amount. Looking good. Let's go ahead and cache hint amount. That's all fine. All right. Only a couple of things left. Let's see. We're going to need arrow sensitivity, blah, 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 blah. On hint clicked. Okay, so we're going to want basically this. So we're going to copy this, paste this here. We're going to make those be errorful right now while I actually add some fields. Oh, and also I can get rid of these formally serialized as because they're not an issue anymore. Had those when I was renaming things. Which, by the way, if you ever need to rename fields and you don't want to lose what values they already had assigned, if you go to unityengine.serialization, there is an attribute called formally serialized as. You can give it a string value, which is the name that it was before, and all of its values that it had before you renamed it will persist. So it's very useful if you are refactoring code or doing anything like that, and you don't want people to lose their values that have been stored already. You can just have that formally serialized as an attribute, and it will retain everything. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of these because it's the same thing. And now I need to actually add the buttons and all that. So we're going to go ahead and copy this. It's going to be word hints amount button. Okay. Or actually, I guess I can just call that hints amount button. Sensitivity slider. FOV slider. That's curious. Why? Here we are, smoothing amount slider. Let's go ahead and copy that. Paste. Oh, I guess it would go here. It's a little awkward that way, but sure, why not? So instead of smoothing amount, this is going to be hint amount slider, followed by hint amount slider, or input. Okay. And then we are going to want to have, we already have our caching, and we are doing that, correct? Cached hints. Cached hint amount is equal to word hint amount. Looking good there. Oh, also, yeah, I need to update these, don't I? So there's going to be arrow sensitivity. You know, just do this. This will be much easier. Arrow, and then also, let's just go ahead and copy that, paste it in. So this is going to be our hint amount slider. Is equal to hint amount. Okay. So that's our refresh settings. I think that's good. On cancel, we got to do the same thing. So we're going to go ahead and copy this. Say arrow, cached arrow sensitivity, cached arrow sensitivity. And paste this. Cached hint amount. Word hint amount is equal to that. Okay, everything's looking good there. And just some minor things left at this point. So this is going to be on hint amount slider changed, on hint amount slider changed, word hint amount is equal to that. Hint amount input versus hint amount slider. Okay. I think that's pretty much everything aside from our event listeners. So let's go ahead and finish that up real quick. So we're going to want to copy this, paste this in. This is going to be our hint amount slider, hint amount, edit on hint amount. All the hints. Okay. Almost done, I promise. And then we'll be able to move on to the actual input stuff. Let's see, smooth amount button, on hover enter. Here we are. So this is going to be our hint amount button. Hint amount. Oh, it's because I called it hints amount button. Okay. And I don't actually think that I have this. Hold hold everything. Show hints, hint, I do not. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this. Paste this in. This is going to be our hint amount. Hint, that's a little awkward. is how many word suggestions are shown. Okay. When typing. Let's go ahead and do that. All the way back down here. Let's get rid of this. So there's going to be hint amount, hint. Okay. And then finally, we will end with hint amount button dot on hover exit dot add listener on hover and or exit. Okay. I think we're good. Ha! So let's go ahead and let that compile. I guess we don't. Oh no, we do have that stuff loading in. Yeah, we do have it saving out and loading in. But question there is it actually being paid attention to? Because let's go to our input view. Okay, how about input view? And then we have our suggestion prefab, which, hold on, let's go back up here. Find all references. Okay, here's our suggestion count. Max suggestion count, which is equal to what? Is that just in there? That's just in there. Okay. Well, how about we change this max suggestion count, which let's see how many times this is used. So we're going to change this to, I guess, game settings dot word hint amount. We'll do that. Let's copy that. Let's paste this down where pretty much everywhere it is. Okay. Generate suggestions. We do all that fun stuff. And before I forget anything else, let's also just even make sure that we want to show these things. So let's find all references here. Current word.length is greater than 1. Let's go ahead and say, we'll do this. If game settings dot show hints, okay, because we only want it to show hints in that case. I think we will be good. Yep, right there. Actually, that's okay. Let's get rid of that. Let's just do this because this is like the last vestiges of the old system that I had. So instead of doing this, which is ugly and is not needed at all. I will actually check to see if this is being used anywhere else. Yeah, it really is not. Okay. So we're just going to do this. Okay. That should now actually handle checking and showing all of our values. So I think we'll be good once we assign all of our references. Everything should be nice. And the only thing I'm really going to have to do after that is handle what happens when we toggle our toggle here. Toggle our toggle, of course. Because if it is disabled, we probably want the word hint amount to be grayed out, similar to what we do for our smoothing field. So let's go ahead and before we do anything else, let's assign those references. Okay, so here is our hint amount button. Here is our hint amount slider. Here's our hint amount input. Everything else is good. This is probably one of the most vertical freaking inspectors I've ever made. It is way too vertical, and I really wish I could collapse it into something more organizable, but I couldn't. I failed in my task over the weekend. I tried really hard to get that to work. What's sad about that is I could write a custom editor for that in like 2 minutes, probably, to do what I want. But I really want to figure out if I can do it just purely on attributes alone. I got really close. I just couldn't quite get to the end there. It makes me sad. All right, so let's go ahead and we're gonna go through here. Let's go to our options. We're gonna go to the games, settings, and oh, I didn't check to see if we were actually scrolled all the way up. But show word hints, show word suggestions as letters are typed when interacting with objects. Determines how many word suggestions are shown when typing. That's all good. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit cancel here. We're gonna go back. Let's continue. And I'm just going to say like eat. Okay, so you can see that we have 3 there. Let's go ahead and change our settings. So let's go to options, game. Let's change our settings down to 2. Hit apply, back, resume. Okay. Then we're going to say eat. Okay, you can see we only have the 2 that are shown there. Let's go ahead and crank that down to 1. Options, game. 1, apply, back, resume. Okay, you'll notice that we only get the 1 now. Let's go ahead and let's do the opposite. Let's crank it all the way up to like 5. So we're going to go to, oh, right, the benchmark is disabled. Let's go to game. We're going to crank this all the way up to 5, hit apply, go back, resume. Okay, so I only have 4 there, because that's probably the maximum amount of words that I have that start with EA. I was going to say Illuminate's probably the only one I got for IL. Let's see. BU, burn. Really? There we go. So that gives us 5. I guess I could, in theory, go higher than that. I just don't want to make it too ridiculous where you have too many words shown on screen. Maybe 10 would be fine. That seems like a lot, honestly, but basically that would just be double the size of this, which I have room for it, go up to about here. Maybe that would make things easier? I don't know. But I guess having the option is certainly not a problem. So let's go ahead and, just before I forget, I'm going to change my options back to 3. Or actually, I guess I'll keep it at 5 so that I know it saves and loads properly. Excuse me. Actually, before I do anything else, let's go ahead and change our keyboard. Let's try to scrub it backwards and then hit cancel. Let's make sure that that saves. Okay, good. Let's stop that. Let's have some fun. Show and explore. Let's go to text quest, settings. Let's check out what our settings file looks like now. So we have all of our appropriate settings. Everything's looking good. And here's our game. Show words true. Show word hints amount is 5. That's perfectly fine. Mouse sensitivity. Hello. Oh, I wonder. Okay, hold on. Hold everything. Hold on. Yep, embarrassing. Very embarrassing. Let's go ahead and save that because that was me being stupid. Okay. Before we go back to let that compile, let's go ahead and go to our game options view. We're going to go all the way up to the top here. And I'm going to move. We're just going to say when an option is enabled. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this. We're going to move it down to the bottom. I guess above all of our hints and such, but that'll be it. Mostly because now that it's being used for multiple things, it doesn't make sense to bunch it in the middle like that. Okay, so before I forget, you know what I do need? Stupid images for that. Right there. Okay. Pretty much gonna do the same thing. Go ahead and go down to here. We're gonna go down to hint amount input, paste this in. This is gonna be hint slider fill, hint input label. Okay, and let's go ahead and say smoothing input label. Where was this handled? It was when I refresh settings, correct? Yes. Okay. So let's go ahead and copy this. Come down to here, and here we are going to say hint smoothing fill, or hit slider fill, then hint input label, and this is going to be equal to show word hints. Let's go ahead and copy this. Okay, and then finally we will say hint slider dot interactable is equal to show word hints versus hint hint input label, no, hint amount input dot interactable is equal to show word hints. Cool. So now I should be saving and loading everything properly, and in addition to that, I should also have my menus be a little bit more responsive to what you're actually doing. So if you enable or disable specific options, their respective controls will be enabled or disabled as well. So that should make it a little bit more apparent what sliders are associated with what fields. Let's go ahead and clear all this fun stuff, and I need to assign all those references again, don't I? Yep. Okay, come on. I believe in you, Unity. Open up. All right, we got pretty much everything else looking good. Let's go ahead, and we're just going to go down to here. Let's grab our fill image there. Let's go ahead and come down to here, text area. Text, I guess we'll rename these real quick. So this is going to be our word hint amount label. Word hint amount fill. Okay, let's go ahead and collapse all that. Word hint amount, all looking good. All right, I think we got everything. So let's go ahead and hit apply. Turn that off. Let's hit save, and I think we're good to test. Oh, you know what I probably should do, by the way? That. Because it is going to be a code-heavy day, obviously. Start. Let's go to options. Go to our game. Nice. We got everything working here. We have smoothing frames turned off. I can't do anything with this. That's all nice. Let's go ahead and test this. Let's make that 8. Does not try to clamp it, which is not great. Probably should. I also forgot to make that go up to 10, but that's fine for now. Funny enough, that actually means I can probably crank that, so let's go ahead and say 10. Hit apply. And just for shiggles, let's go ahead and come in here. Crap, what was the word? Pick. Do I still only have 5? Let's see if I can get something. I think it is clamped to 5 still. I'm guessing that happened when we closed. So let's go ahead and actually, you know what? I guess a way for us to test that. Yep, it got clamped to 5. Okay. Well, that's fine. Let's go ahead and before we do anything else, we're gonna go to options, game. Let's go back up to here, and all I'm gonna do is just turn that on. Okay, hit apply, go back, zoom, and now if I do, yep, nice. No hints. Cool. So let's go ahead and turn those back on. And we'll go to game, scroll down to here, turn you on. Let's shrink that back to 3, hit apply, let's go back, zoom, let's turn this off. And we're going to change some things real quick. Let's see, arrow sensitivity, FOV, word hint amount, cached hint amount, blah, blah, blah. That's all looking pretty good. So I think what I have to do as far as this goes is I actually want to clamp my string values. Yes, so you can see that I'm doing that here. And I probably really want to do that for pretty much everywhere that I have slider related changes happening. So same thing with slider or arrow sensitivity. We're just going to change that to arrow sensitivity X or Y slider. Let's go ahead and copy that. Pretty much just going to do that for all of them so that they are appropriately set. Okay, arrow sensitivity Y input. That's all fine. Let's see. Paste that. It's all going to be messed up for a second while I kind of come through here and speed do this. Sensitivity Y, sensitivity X, hint amount, and smooth amount. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, I think that's everything I need. So we're going to say pretty much all this fun stuff. Copy here, paste, paste. Paste. Okay, looking good. All right, I think that's everything that we need. I should now clamp everything as we would expect. Should also make sure that we get the correct values whenever we type things in. Let me make sure that that is actually, no, that's definitely the case. So let's go ahead and let that compile. I'm going to take another drink, and then we will test that. Oh, and I need to make it so that it goes up to 10. For players that truly want to see a bunch of words all at once. Okay, now let's go ahead and open. I can't tell. Compile wheel. You've been my enemy for so long, I never thought I would miss you. Let's turn this on. We're just going to go down to content. Import content. Word hint amount. Word hint slider. We will make this go from 1 to 10, actually. Keep it at 3. Everything else is the same. Let's go ahead and collapse this. Oh, and I guess before I forget, let's make sure that you were at, I thought so, 1. Okay, hold on. There we go. Just needed to make sure that I get set to 1, otherwise it gets super weird. So, okay, everything else looks like it's pretty good, so let's go ahead and just close this. Let's delete that. Turn off our UI, hit save. Okay, so now all that should work. The next thing that we're going to focus on, kind of putting the cart ahead of the horse here, assuming that this actually works, but the next thing we're going to work on is the actual key binding visuals as far as input goes, and then if we can get through all of that, then we'll finally do the rewired stuff. I'm not entirely sure if we're going to get to that or not. I don't anticipate the UI portion taking too long because it's already mostly done, but you know, whenever I think that's the case, things go haywire somehow. Okay, let's go to game. Looking pretty good. Let's crank that to 10. Hit apply. This is going to be ridiculous. Hit continue. Okay, eat was not the thing. I always forget what I typed. Well, that certainly is a lot. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8. That's 10. So yeah, 10 is probably the limit that I want to go to, just because otherwise it's going to be pretty freaking close to going off the screen. And I honestly think that 3 is a good size. Or maybe 4 should be the default. 4 might actually be preferable. I am actually curious what I had it at, because everything seemed to indicate that it was 4. and I don't remember exactly because I was thinking it was 3 and I didn't pay attention. Let's go to input. Okay, so no, it was 3. So I was right there. So yeah, I think that will pretty much be what. Interesting. Pretty much be our good range. I think 1 to 10. 1 is obviously not really a lot, and 10 is obviously a ton. So I think having just 3 is a nice way to keep it short, readable, and actually relevant. Yeah, you can actually see that with 10, we're getting into a lot of duplicates. Like we have maps, which is just the plural form of map, then masks, then mattresses. And that's just because of how the system prioritizes showing you words. Basically, what it does is it goes through and tries to show you unique words before it shows you plural forms of words. That way, you don't just get like table, tables, since that would be 2 slots instead of 1. And if you have table, you can kind of safely assume that you have tables. So we don't really need to have duplicates unless we just run out and we need to fill stuff up, which is what happened here. So let's go ahead, close this. Let's go to our options, game, change this back to 3 by default. Hit apply. Let's go back, resume. Much better. All right. So that's pretty much everything that we want for our in-game options. Now we need to get to our actual key bindings. So let's go ahead and turn on our UI here. We're going to open up our key binding options view. And let's see, generate buttons, which I do have on binding button clicked. Go to definition. Right, so here is where things get a little weird because actually, okay. Okay, so I was debating doing something that a lot of games allow you to do when you have custom key bindings, which is if you hit backspace while it's listening for a key input, then it would just clear that command so that you couldn't do it. But the problem with that is if I do that, I need to, I need to do a safety check because I should never allow you to delete a key if you need that key to progress. So for example, I should never allow you to get rid of or to clear both the interact and the alt interact buttons because you need one of those to progress in the game. Technically, you actually don't because the key to open the input menu is enter, and it is always going to be available as an option, but still, just for the sake of example. And that, although that actually does bring me to the second point, which is some keys need to be reserved. So, for example, backspace and enter can never be anything other than backspace a character and open and close the input menu and submit. Because if they are, then it gets like if you tried to make enter your close menu button, then you'd never be able to interact with anything because the moment you try to submit it, which would be hitting enter, it wouldn't work. Like nothing, it would just close before you did anything. So there are some special functions that do require yawns. That require very specific keys to be pressed. And I don't really want to allow you to use those reserved keys. So I think backspace and enter are really the only two that need to be reserved. I think pretty much everything else is up for grabs. So this is going to be fun. I'm probably going to want to have a modal, and I'm probably going to want to have... Yep. Okay. So we're going to have to create a modal real quick. So I'm going to say create C# script key binding modal. Yeah, that's pretty much all I need. Okay. Let's open this up. So this is going to be in our text quest namespace. It is going to derive from. I do have a text quest modal, but I don't really want to use it here. It's kind of weird. So we're going to say using sleepyowl.common. So this is going to derive from game modal. Okay. And then this is where things get kind of weird. So I don't really have anything special that I need to do visually for this, but I do need to have a description. Let me think. So the way this is usually done is you click on a yawn again. You click on a field, and then you say it shows you a pop-up that's like press a key to assign it or whatever, and then you press the key, and then it pops into the area where you can see all the key bindings. I feel like I'm going to want to have my modal pop up, give you that message, and then it's going to need to return the key that you pressed. Ugh. Okay. God, this is. Oh, God. Oh, no. Oh, that is not okay. Yeah, this is gonna suck, isn't it? Okay. Uh, so I need to have an event that is the key code that you press essentially. That's going to replace the normal event that this returns when you make a selection, which is actually select an integer. It just passes back an int. So this is going to be okay. Let me try this. Private system key code. I'm sorry, I did that backwards. Dot action key code. I guess actually it could be an integer now that I think about it. I can just cast it to an int and then cast it back. So that actually works perfectly. So the only thing I need to do then is say override open, override open, override close. Huh. I don't even remember what the open with defaults is used for. Yeah, straight up don't recall what that is for. Oh, it's the defaults based on the, yeah, never mind. That's something else. So probably what I want to do is just have an update function. And this is where things get really bad. We're going to essentially do private void update. And we're going to say if input dot. Actually, you know what? Let's go if input dot composition string. That's new. Interesting. I think what we can do here is say if input dot input string string dot is null or empty. So if that is not null or empty, then we want to call back. But here's where it gets super awkward because holy crap, that won't work. Shift wouldn't do anything. Okay, can't do it that way. Which means that I need to detect the key. Yep. Yup. Shoot. Okay. Well, this is what I wanted to avoid. But oh boy, I don't think that I can. Essentially, what's going to happen is I'm going to need to listen for any input from the user. So I'm going to just say if input dot any key down, and then I need to figure out what that key is. Here's the problem. Input does not have any way of telling you what is currently being pressed. You can tell if something's being pressed, that's what this any key down does. But to get the exact thing that's actually being typed, you need to do either input string, which is a string value. Like if you type the S key, then the input string for that frame will be S. But here's the problem. It does not work for non-character keys. So if I want to detect, say, left shift, well, the input string is nothing because you didn't type anything. So that's kind of a problem. We can double check that, and I guess I will go ahead and do that just to be safe, to make sure that I'm not crazy. Because who knows, maybe they've changed it in 4.10, and we'll get really lucky. I seriously doubt it, but you know, it's good to dream. So we're going to do string.format, just do this, and it's just going to be wrapped in brackets so that I can guarantee that I can see the character. Such as if it was a space or something, I can make sure that they look like they're different. So let's just go ahead and do this. Then we're going to come back over here, and for the time being, I'm just going to say when we click on a button for key binding, we're just going to call UI.openModal key binding modal. And we'll give it a message of, oof, that's where it gets kind of messy. I guess that would be key binding for plus bindings dot bindings up. Hold on. Bindings of I or of index, right? Dot type string, I guess. Yep. Okay, so that is our message that gets displayed on our modal. Then we're going to need a callback, which I will simply set to null right now, because if it's null, it won't do anything. With a title of set key binding, I guess. Not J binding, key binding. And that's pretty much it, right? Oh yes, the options. We're just going to say new, okay, fine, game modal option. And we'll just give it a default option of cancel, because the only thing that we want to show is the actual color. So we're just going to say color.white. I think that will be fine. And we should be good. That should actually show everything. Although before I forget, I will go ahead and say key binding for whatever is actually going to be our title. Let's go ahead and paste this. And then, so we're going to say set key binding for that. And our message is actually going to be type any key to set the binding, which is not a great name or title, but whatever, we'll come back for that. Okay, so that should properly, you know what, let's go ahead and come down here. We're going to say private void on binding set int value, blah, blah, blah. Let's go ahead and just pass that back instead of null. Okay, and then we'll debug.log, and we're just going to say key binding, not key binding, sorry, key code based off of the value, because it should in theory be an actual key code value. Oh, and I did actually forget one thing, which is when we, well, I guess actually it doesn't really matter. For this, we're just going to see what our inputs are. Although I do have to make that modal. So fun. All right, I'm going to cheat, and by cheat, I mean I'm basically just going to take the existing modal that we have and use it. So we'll go to modal prefabs. I'm going to just going to grab a game modal. I think this has everything yeah, pretty much formatted like the way I want it to. Not really going to change anything, to be honest. I'm just going to use this default template for now. We're going to add our key binding modal, come down here. Let's add our root Is this? Yeah, it's normally turned off, I believe. So let's go ahead and turn that off. Make sure that I'm not crazy. Good. Okay. Message label, content label, title label. Let's go ahead and grab all this fun stuff. Little button. All that stuff is fine. Default options. Yep. That's looking good. Okay. And the only thing I need to do now is remove this. Let's go ahead and just call this modal dash key or key binding. Modal dash key binding. Key bindings, I guess. And let's go ahead and collapse that. We're going to make that into a new prefab. Put that right there. Okay. Let's delete you. Turn this off. I'm going to select the prefab here because I actually want to add that. So I'm going to come down to here, add our key bindings modal. Cool. So now everything should be in place. So if we go to our input key bindings menu, I should be able to click on one of the buttons, and then it should open up that modal for me. So let's go to Start, Options, Key Bindings. Okay. So set key binding for move forward, type any key to set the binding. Oh, that's hilarious. Our key binding. Our input field is selected. Okay. That complicates things. Well, that's fine for now. It just means that we're going to get some typing. So if I hit, yep. So that's left shift. You'll see that we have our debug string coming out of the bottom left. So left shift does not give us any. No, I know. Sticky keys. So hitting left shift does not give us a string. That's useful. Hitting any of the characters does. Numbers do. As do capitalization. So holding down shift in connection with it is fine. Oh, interesting. Tab does literally nothing. Caps lock does nothing. Oh, also, I bet that's not helping. Let's turn off collapse so that I can see everything. So let's go to A. Okay, so tab does something. It just does nothing in terms of string. Okay, backspace does nothing. Great. Let's go ahead and stop playing. I'm actually going to, just purely out of curiosity, I'm also going to debug the length of input string, because if I'm lucky, what's actually happening isn't that we're getting an empty string back. Rather, it's that we are getting a character that is simply a character that does not take up space. Because there are Unicode characters for things like backspace and enter and shift and all that, but they are not visible normally. They're treated as empty. Even though they are still, they're treated as white space, but they are still a character, and therefore they do technically have length in a string. So if my string is actually a length of 1, that means that we are at least getting something back, and I can work with that. It becomes a little tedious, but I can work with it. So let's try that again. And stretch while that's happening. All right. So let's go to Start. I'm going to go to Options. Let's go to Key Bindings, move forward. Okay, so I'm going to hit Shift. Dang. Oh, well. Oh, nope. Backspace gets 1. Interesting. So Shift gets 0, but Backspace does get 1. So, I was right to try and assume that, but the problem is that it doesn't catch shifts still. I really don't want to go the nuclear way. Okay. So, this really sucks. So the nuclear option is the one that sucks the most, which is basically to literally loop through every key code and just see if it's being pressed. Not ideal. at all. Um, we're actually going to, oh, jeez, let's go back here. Okay, so I am going to, this is really, really, really going to suck. But I'm going to go ahead and say private key codes is equal to new key code 0 private void start. Okay, and then we're just going to say key codes is equal to enum extensions dot get values for key code key code. That's weird, but okay. What is going on here? Definition. That's the enum value, which I don't think I actually need to do. Yeah. Because that's not even being used, so let's get rid of that. Because it definitely does not need that. Okay, we're going to save that. And we're going to say, come back here. So that should initialize the key code list, or my key code array here. And then what I can do is I can just say for int I equals 0, I is less than key codes tut length. God, this is going to suck. I plus plus. If input dot get, get key down, key codes of I. Oh my god, this is so terrible. We're going to call on button clicked, and it's going to be an int version of key codes of I. Oh, jeez. Yep. That is totally how that works. Jeez. Why? Yep. God, that's going to be so terrible. So this is actually funny enough. This is I was going to say common, but it's not really common. A frequent enough thing that at work we actually have a script written that just cycles through all of the inputs and then outputs if any of them are being clicked, or I guess tapped or pressed or whatever. But I think the way we wrote it there is we actually hand wrote all of the if statements. And now that I think about it, this approach is certainly much faster. Because it took me, like 5 lines of code as opposed to, oh god. Pretty sure there are over 100, if not hundreds, of key code values. So this will hopefully not be terrible. Honestly, the worst thing about it is just looping through 100 iterations every time you press a key is not going to be great. So let's go ahead and say options, key bindings, move forward. It totally did detect it, though. Got an A back. And that was properly converted from an int to a key code value, so it works. So with that, we can actually interact with it. So I am going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to turn the UI off because it should have been off. But two, force input focus. So I'm going to uncheck force input focus on the key bindings view because we don't actually want it to constantly reselect it if it's open. So we're going to go ahead and apply those changes, and then we're going to make it so that when we get our value back, we will debug it. Let's go to our modal. I don't need this anymore. And we will attempt to set it. So before we do anything else, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to say private int active index is equal to -1. Okay. Then we're going to say when we click on a button, we're going to say active index is equal to index. We're going to come down here and on binding set, we are going to say, I guess, actually, do I have a refresh? I do. Okay. Yep. So we're going to say bindings dot bindings of active index dot key is equal to key code value. Okay, pretty straightforward. But before I do anything else, I do want to also say if value does not equal 0, because if it's a value of 0, then I believe that's keycode.none. I want to confirm this though. Yes, okay, keycode.none is 8. Or is 0, sorry. Backspace is 8. Okay. So, although that's actually kind of interesting, I could probably get the current key press from event now that I think about it. I wonder, actually, just out of curiosity. Event systems. Yeah, that's not going to work. Hold on. Unity engine dot events. Event. Oh, sorry, did that wrong. Dot event. Okay, so it's not events, it's actually event. Event systems dot event system dot current dot key. Nope. What are my options here? I think that's actually the wrong thing. I don't remember what my code was for detecting the. I thought it was just event. Hold on, just out of curiosity. Dot event. Nope. Event. Okay, nope. That kind of makes me think that it's system dot events. Whatever. I'll look into that later. So that should actually set up our key binding. And in addition to that, we are going to say, let's go to, I guess we'll just call generate buttons again. That should refresh everything. So let's take a look at that. It might be a little awkward at first, but I think it will work overall. Okay. And we're not done compiling, sadly. There we go. So let's let that play through, see what it looks like. Start. We're going to go to options, key bindings. So this is W. By default, I'm going to make it Q. Boo. Okay, so that didn't actually do anything. Before I close, though, I will check. Let's go to view container, key bindings, key binding collection, and the first thing is this. Interesting. Oh, I know why. Let's go ahead and stop. Because we don't want to just say dot key. We actually want to say dot. Yeah, you know what? I guess we could just do that, but I'm actually gonna. Oh, okay, whatever, that works. Let's go ahead and just add a function, so it'll automatically call everything for us, and we're just gonna say public void set key code, and then we're just gonna say key is equal to code. We'll just actually call that key code. Copy that, paste that in there, and then we'll call reinitialize. does. I feel like type string is never actually going to change, so that's probably safe to not worry about. Doesn't really make sense to generate that extra garbage, so I'll just do this. If type string dot length is equal to 0, then we'll go ahead and do that. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. The key string totally needs to be redone because it could be different. So let's go ahead and let that go. And here is where things get a little bit more, I don't want to say difficult, because we are going to have to, actually no, I don't even think I have to do anything extra to save it. Pretty sure that it uses those bindings, so we should be fine. Let's go ahead and hit play again, except I need to wait for it to actually compile. Okay, let's go ahead and click through here. Start. We're going to do, I keep wanting to go to extras. I'm like, that's not correct. Options, key bindings. Curious. So it's totally doing it. Well, let's go ahead and debug this so I can at least see. Yeah, why are you W still? You are totally, you should be a Q. Oh, because I set up the function and then I didn't call it because I'm stupid. Set key. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and let that compile. I always do that whenever I do something simple. It's like, this will solve my problems, and then I forget to actually call that thing. Okay. So that is finished. Are you serious? You're still not done compiling? One day. My dream is to work on my game one day without lag. It's not really even lag, it's just compilation time. Which I could probably try to reduce by doing assembly definitions, but those get to be headaches after a while. Let's go ahead and do type start, options, nope, not game. Key bindings, move forward, and Q. There we are. So we now have that showing up, and it does refresh. Type any key to set the binding. Set key binding for move forward. Probably I'll relay this out a little bit so we have more room for our top bit here, and we have some breathing room for the divide. And then I think what we're going to do is, instead of just type any key to set the binding, we'll say type any key to set the binding, and then immediately below that it will say current key, blah, whatever. Then if we hit cancel, oh dear. Oh no. Oh, that's not good. Oh, yep. So I can't click on cancel because it interprets that as the action. Whoops. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's get you back to W. Actually, no. Let's put it to Q, and then I'm gonna go ahead and say accept. Oh, right. That doesn't do anything. Well, that's embarrassing. Let's go ahead and stop that. And then we're going to go ahead and hit play again. And I don't think that will actually do anything, because I think all those will be overridden. I don't think we actually have it called yet. So let's go ahead and, yeah, okay, it's being overridden so far. That's fine, though. So, actually, you know what? I wonder if I can just do this, too. Buttons of active index dot, is there like a reinitialize? Let's just go ahead and call reinitialize actually on that. That won't work, will it? Nope. Nope. Dang. I was just gonna say it doesn't really make sense for me to recycle and regenerate all that stuff when I could just refresh the one that's affected, and that's kind of all I need to do. So let's figure out a way to do that actually. Um, so I think probably one of the easiest things to do here is let's go to our key binding button, go to definition. We have our labels. Let's just go ahead and now that I think about it, let's add a serialized field, tooltip, blah blah blah, and private key binding data collection bindings asset containing key binding data. And all we're really going to need is that plus serialized field, tooltip, blah, 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 private key code, not key code. What is this? It is key binding type. Binding is equal to binding type dot. I don't have a none, so we're just going to make it auto move by default. And this is just going to be key binding, oops, lowercase b, key binding this associated with this button. Okay. And then all we're really going to do is instead of doing this whole initialize label, value label and all that, which by the way is basically doing what I'm about to do here, we're just going to initialize, instead of passing all of this stuff in, we're going to say, yoink, take that, come back here, paste that, and then we're going to say bindings dot get binding, and crud, hold on. Of course not, because I am stupid and don't plan ahead. Get binding. Do I not have a get binding data? I do not. Well, I will add that now real quick. So we're just going to say public key binding, not binding, binding data, get binding data. It will take a key binding type, oops, don't need a comma there, type. All right, and then we're just going to do a quick for loop, pretty much do this. Instead of returning key, we're just going to return that. We'll return null by default. And we will go ahead, no, that's all fine actually. Okay, so some quick comments. Returns data for the target key binding. Okay. The target key binding to return. Pretty boring, but okay. We're going to come back here and we're just going to say get binding data. We will go ahead and let's change a couple of things. Thinking about presentation here. Let's go ahead and say private key. Oh wait, no, I don't need to do that. I can just come back up here because it's public. Actually, I guess I can not have that be serialized because it doesn't need to be. So let's go ahead and get rid of this, paste it in down here, and then we're just going to say we expect a value of this, and then we're just going to say this dot binding is equal to binding, okay, and then we're just going to go ahead and grab that. Type string, all good. Let's go ahead and copy this. Paste this in there. Key string, why are you so mad? Oh, that's why. Duh. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. Okay. It's equal to that. and I don't really think we're going to need this anymore, but yeah, we definitely don't need that. So let's go ahead and get rid of that, because we can just set everything back when we are done with this. So we can get rid of you. And for now, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of you because I don't think we're going to need our set editing stuff. Okay. So now, if we go to our option view, instead of initialize, it's going to pass initialize bindings dot bindings. Hold on. Bindings of I dot type. Okay, pretty straightforward. And now we're passing one int value instead of two string values, so that's always nice. Let's see. And then now I can actually just go ahead and go back here to our key binding button and add a reinitialize function. So public void reinitialize. Let's go ahead and just grab this, paste this down here, and then we'll just call reinitialize here. Pretty straightforward. Let's go back here to our game options view. After we set our key binding, we are going to say blah, blah, blah. Then we will do, instead of generate buttons, and we're not going to do it outside of the value there, we're just going to say buttons of active index dot reinitialize. Pretty straightforward. And then at the end, we're just going to say active index is equal to -1 again. Pretty straightforward. So that should, in theory, now allow us to set our bindings and have them stick. But here's the thing, we need to handle saving and loading still. So real quick, I'm going to go over to, let's close these, so I don't really need them. I want to see what my close does in this function, because I'm pretty sure all it does is open up the previous menu, which is right here, game settings.save settings, and base.close. Yes. Okay, let's find all references. Or more specifically, let's find this in this document. Really? I don't believe that. Hold on. Huh. I am a little baffled. Where is... Ah, here we are on cancel clicked. Ah, that's why. Okay. So let's go ahead and copy this. We're going to go down to option view. Go to here. On close, we're pretty much just going to do the exact same thing that we did in the other menu. So we're going to call clean up buttons, and in addition to that, we will also call game settings.save settings. Okay there, and on accept clicked, we're going to do pretty much the same thing. So we'll paste that, assuming that's the same. Yep, cool. The only difference is that now I do technically need to cache everything and then handle setting them if I cancel. For now, though, I'm going to say it's fine. And actually, one of the things that I do need is... that sucks. Okay. I essentially need to have a reset to default button, or restore to defaults, or restore defaults, or whatever. So that's going to be a thing. Well, let's do a couple of things. One, we're going to wait for it to finish compiling. And two, I probably... Okay, it's going to be super weird, but I don't... I think the easiest thing, honestly, for me to do is just duplicate this key binding collection, and then if I want to reset it, I'll just loop through a default version of it that has all of the bindings set to whatever I want them to be by default, and just assign them. So, little awkward. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. I'm going to rename this to defaults. And actually, I'm going to rename this to defaults 2 because I want to make sure that's capitalized. There. Okay. So all we need to do here, let's go ahead and collapse that, is let's go ahead and go back to key bindings here. We're going to go up to our key bindings option view. At the very top, we're going to go ahead and copy paste. This is going to be our default bindings. Data for default key binding values. Okay. Then we're going to want to have, in addition to a cancel button and an accept button, a restore default button, I guess. Restore button to click to restore key bindings to their default values. Okay. We're going to come down to here. We're going to say private void on restore clicked. And here's where it gets fun. We're going to say for int I equals 0. I is less than. Okay. So it's going to be default bindings dot bindings dot length I plus plus, and we're just going to say bindings dot bindings of I is equal to not equal dot key is equal to default bindings dot bindings of I dot key. It's essentially all we're doing there. And I guess I could actually just call set key. Set key. Do that, make sure that it's all correct. So pretty simple there. Then we're going to come down here, we'll say restore button dot on click dot add listener on restore clicked, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I think we're good there. After I loop through and do all that again, I'm going to want to go ahead and just call, I could refresh, but I guess in this case it would actually make more sense to just generate them again. So let's just call generate buttons after that. And then I'll be able to end this with oh boy, this is gonna suck. You know what? I might actually want a third one that's like temporary bindings. That's probably again the fastest way to do this. So let's go ahead and add a third one. And we'll call these we'll call this temp bindings or cached bindings. Data for cached key binding values that are set when the menu opens. So pretty much we're going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to go ahead and copy this for loop. And actually, you know what? Two, I'm just going to go ahead and go straight to key binding data collection. And I'm just going to add a function up here at the very top that says public void set bindings. We're going to give it a key binding data collection. I'll just call it collection. And we're just going to paste this for loop in there. And all we're going to do is just say collection. That. So that makes it a lot easier for us to do this. Because now I can simply go down to key binding option view. Instead of doing this, I can just say bindings dot set bindings default bindings. On cancel clicked, we can simply say bindings dot set bindings cached bindings, and on open I can just say cached bindings dot set bindings. Pretty straightforward. Reduces that down to one line each, which is much more preferable than 3 lines. Okay. I think that will now do everything that I'm expecting. Save settings, I believe, does actually pay attention to our key bindings. Yep. So we should be good. Should be good. So let's go ahead and let that compile. Of course, geez, the irony of that is actually real quick. I'm going to go to hold on. Here, let's go to definition. I'm going to pass in a value bool reinitialize, and then what I'm going to do is say is equal to true. Then I'm going to pass in reinitialize here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this so I can go to set key, go to definition, paste that in, and then I'm just going to say if reinitialize, then reinitialize, because it doesn't make sense for me to regenerate all those strings on default and cache settings, because for those, all I care about is their actual key binding. So all I care about is the binding ID and the key code ID. That's it. I don't care about the strings because they're never going to be used. So I can avoid reinitializing all of that. So we're just going to go ahead and copy this, and then I'm going to go back here. We'll save this. Let's go to key binding options view. So this is going to be false. Let's go ahead and find all of this. That was not what I wanted to hit. Let's come back down to here. So on cancel clicked, that one we do care about because it's the manual binding. Yep. Okay, so for both of these we care, but for the other one we don't. Okay. So let's go ahead and let that compile. And that should be pretty much everything that we would expect. Okay. I can't scroll yet. I have to wait. Any day now. There we go. Let's go ahead and duplicate this real quick too. We'll rename this to be cache. Okay, so let's go to here. Let's turn this on. Turn on our root because there's some minor changes that I need to make. There's our cache bindings. Here's our defaults. I guess I don't really have much of a choice. I have to put my... I'm going to shrink the accept and cancel buttons, I think, to make them a little less... Well, no, they're 50. They're not super big. They're pretty big, though. Because I'm going to have 3 buttons here, and it's just going to make my scroll bar so tiny. So let's just real quick do a couple of things. One, I need to grab my actual key binding button, which is somewhere. There you are. Okay. And for now, because I'm lazy, I'm just going to debug this. And we're going to slide in our bindings here. We will fix that at a later date. Or I guess I should do it right now. So let's go ahead and do that, actually. Key binding button. Find all references. Okay. So we're going to grab this, paste this. This is our bindings. Bindings. Let's go ahead and copy this, paste this. Bindings. Bindings. Okay. And then we're just going to copy this, paste that, make this bindings. Nice. So that should now be visible in our actual inspector for this. I don't know if I want to make this... I'm just going to shrink these texts So these labels are no longer going to be at their current size, which I think is 42 font size. I will know in a second when I'm able to move again. Thanks, compilation time. There we go. I'm going to guess 42. Could be 48. Nope, it's 48. Okay. And I think our current key binding button is actually at like 30 something, 36. I could probably shrink it down to 36. That would be fine with me, actually. So let's go ahead and do that real quick to show you what that looks like. So we take it from 48 to 36. It's a little bit more, we have a little bit more room now. So I'm going to actually go ahead and focus up on this. And it took me way far away. Because that's going to let me shrink our buttons here to be about 40 instead of 50. So if I grab these and make these 40, grab that, still have plenty of room. It's not overlapping with anything. Okay, good. So now I can more easily fit a third one in there. It won't be quite as obnoxious. Let's go ahead and single these out. Assuming it will let me. We're going to rename this to our restore button. Okay. So this is going to be the button that actually restores all of the key code bindings to their default values. We'll go ahead and change our label real quick just to be restore defaults. Oh, good. And that means that I need to move everything over by 1, 2. Okay. So this is going to be R, I guess. Let's go ahead and move everything up by a little bit. So a position of 50. I want not 500, 50. And we can move you up by 30 to 90. Nope, 100. Wait a second. Yes, that's fine. They're like right on top of each other, which I think is okay. So let's go ahead and we're going to change our content, or rather, I guess our scroll view. We're going to set its bottom to be 150. Yeah, that's good. So it's just so small now. We'll see if that's okay. Let's go ahead and change our labels here a little bit so that they are not quite as unbalanced. Let's hit back. We'll put it there. So we're just going to add 1 space, I think. Ooh, 2 spaces, actually. Okay. So that should be fine. Let's go ahead and assign our references, and we should be good. So there's our restore button. Okay. I think everything is pretty much good to go there, so let's go ahead and apply our changes. Apply, turn this off, hit save, and give it a test. So with these most recent alterations, we should essentially have caching working. So if we cancel, it'll reset everything. We should have saving working. And if we hit back or accept, it should actually open up the previous menu. So I think this is pretty much all of the front-facing stuff that we need to do, I think. So let's go ahead and open this up. We do get to scroll through all of this. That's all fine. Probably I could reduce the spacing between these, honestly. I think these are probably still sized at 50. I bet if I shrink them down to 40, it'll be a little bit better. Okay, so we do not have, by the way, any... Oh, we're not assigning the on-exit listeners to them, so their hints are never going away. But we also don't have hints for these things, for these 3 buttons, which obviously we want. Okay, so as far as move forward goes, let's go ahead and set that to Q. Looking good. Let's go to restore. Actually, no, let's go ahead and hit accept. Okay, let's go back to key bindings. Q, good. It's set to that again. Let's set this to E now. Cool. Let's go ahead and cancel. Then go to the key bindings again. Good, it's back to Q, so that did work. Let's go ahead and pause and take a look at our settings to make sure that that's all getting saved out. So this should be Q. Nice. So that's correct. Next, let's see the last thing we need to do, which is just do restore defaults. Looking good. Obviously, we don't want it to just immediately do that. We actually want it to like do a little modal pop-up that's like, "Are you sure you would like to restore defaults?" And then we'll say yes or no, and then do the appropriate action after that. Um, Funny enough, actually, we can now try to adjust our spacing to match up with these key bindings a little bit better. Actually, I don't know if I want to do that or not. That might be visually confusing. I mean, it would look better because they'd be visual or they'd be vertically aligned, but it would make things a little more awkward. But for now, let's go ahead and try it just to see if we like it. So let's go to key bindings, root, content. Let's go to our accept button, label, space, space. Dang it, I can't get it to match up perfectly, so it's going to have like a slight off. Ah, madness. Madness and suffering. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and let's adjust some of those values. So let's go ahead, open up our UI, do view key bindings, paste content, accept button. Let's change its label to be that value that we copied, and now we can change the other two to be that as well in terms of spacing. Work with me here. All right. So that's that. Let's go ahead and turn this off. Let's hit apply. And now we need to do a couple of backend things to just make it a little bit more user-friendly. Let's go ahead and go to our key binding options view. When we call, yeah, you'll see that we're not doing any of this hover exit stuff. So real quick, let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to say button.onHoverExit.addListener, and then it's just going to be on hover exit. Hit OK. And actually, let's just go ahead and rename this to just be on hover exit, because it's going to be used for pretty much everything. Looking good there. Let's go ahead and copy this. Actually, we don't need to copy that. We can just say buttons of I dot on hover. Oh, I was already doing that. Then I need to do it for on hover enter. That's what it was. On hover enter. Remove all listeners. Okay. So that takes care of hovering over and off of labels. Now we need to handle that for our actual accept, cancel, and restore defaults button. And that means we want to have some text fields here. So we're going to say serialized field, text area, and, oh, sorry, it doesn't take strings. We'll just say 2 to 3. Then private string accept hint is equal to apply current key bindings and return to the options menu. Okay, let's go ahead and copy that. Paste this. This is going to be our cancel hint. And this is going to be cancel current key bindings and return to the options menu. Kind of boring, I guess. I could probably try to be more descriptive and say like reset, cancel adjusted key bindings, modified. I like that a little bit more. Cancel modified key bindings and return to the options menu. That's pretty good. And then finally our restore hint, which is going to be restore hint with an E. This will be reset all key bindings to their default values. Okay. And then come back here, do that. Let's go down to the very bottom. When we're here, we're going to say accept button dot on hover enter dot add listener delegate, and we're going to say on key binding hover enter, which we will rename to just on hover enter, and this will be our accept hint. Okay, let's go ahead and rename this to just on hover enter. Grab you, come back here, we're going to paste that twice. We're going to have our cancel hint, okay, followed by our restore hint. It's going to be our cancel button, restore button, All right, looking good. And now the only thing I should have to, well, actually, oh, the modal. Right. So we're going to go up to on accept clicked. And here is where things are going to get a little different. We're going to say private void on restore option selected int value. Oop, that was weird. Okay. All we're going to do there is say if value is equal to 0, that means yes, I believe. And in that case, we're going to just say we will do this. So we're actually going to do that. And in addition to that, we are going to say on restore clicked, it's not going to actually automatically reset our bindings. Instead, it's going to open up that modal. So we'll say UI dot open modal, and we're just going to open up game modal because we just need our basic. Actually, you know what? We can make it our TQ modal. And that's just going to be a message that says restore key binding defaults, question mark. Our callback will be on restore option selected, and our title is going to be restore defaults. Okay, and we're going to say instead of restore key binding defaults, this will be restore key binding default values. And actually, I will say restore default key binding values. Okay, and before we do anything else, I am actually going to come up to here. And after all of our hints, I'm going to just say serialize field, private, game modal option. This will be our yes option is equal to new modal option. This is going to be yes, followed by color dot gray, I guess. Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and copy this. No option. Okay. And we're going to come down here. We're going to say yes option versus no option. Okay. There we go. That should do everything that we need it to. So let's go ahead and let that compile. So now when we click restore, it should no longer just instantly do it. We should have a little bit of a delay where it pops up a modal and is basically like, are you sure? And then if you hit no, nothing will happen. Hit yes, it will reset everything. Oh, I'd love to test it, but I can't do anything until we're done compiling. There we go. Okay. That's probably fine. I'm fine with leaving them as gray. I am going to go ahead and let's see, make sure everything else is correct. Let's go ahead and just apply changes just for fun. I'm going to select this, turn this off, and I'm actually going to check. Yeah, I thought so. I don't have a text quest game modal that's by itself. So I guess I'll make it just a game modal, the basic one. That's fine. So this is going to be just the game modal. And I don't honestly recall if I can cheat this. Nope, I totally can't. So I'm going to just hope that it picks the right one. I'm assuming it will because it's the first one, but a little worried that it might get into a race condition where it tries to like find any of them that are of type game modal, which is totally a thing, but okay, so we'll let that compile, and an eternity later, we should be able to actually test it. There we go. So let's go ahead and clear this, hit save, and now the magic happens. And everything worked perfectly. Like it always does. All right, so let's go ahead and click through here. I'm going to go to options. We'll go to key bindings. We will go to restore defaults, restore default key binding values. Yep, that's pretty much what I would want. We're going to hit no. Nothing should happen. Good. Still Q. We'll restart or restore, hit yes. Boom. Nice. Then if we hit cancel and go back, it'll still be Q. But then if we hit restore defaults, hit yes, and then apply, let's go back to key bindings and hooray, it works. So yes, we now have the front-facing settings menu exposed, and it is taking input from the player. It's basically listening for what they want. There are some, obviously, still some minor things to change here, and oh right, I still can't left click because of that, so I'm gonna have to figure out what to do about that. There actually are ways for me to check if basically the mouse is over a button, and if that's the case, I will just ignore it. So I'm gonna hit. Let's go to cancel and then go back to key bindings. So there are still some things that I obviously want to change, just for usability's sake. But we're on the right path, and we are almost done with this. So I think on Thursday what we're going to do is we are going to look at integrating Rewired and actually having it, moving my systems for input over to that. Fortunately, I don't need to change a whole bunch. Pretty much the only thing I really need for that is the axis information, which is really only used in a handful of places. So I should be fine. It's not going to be an overwhelming task, I hope. But this is good. We're on a pretty good path with this, and once this is done, then players will be able to do custom key bindings, which is one of the most important things for PC games to have. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good place to stop for the night. Announcements. Should be on schedule to do a Thursday Devstream, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. But Saturday's Devstream is not going to happen this week because I have a friend coming over for the weekend. So I will not be streaming this weekend. But that should pretty much be all the announcements that I have for the immediate term. So as always, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.